Good evening and welcome to the Monday, September 14th, Muscatine Community School District Board of Education meeting. Upon arriving into City Hall today, everyone has followed the guidelines for masking. We are each distanced apart, and in order so that we can effectively hear each other and you are able to hear us, we are going to go ahead and remove masks. So, Madam Secretary, could I ask that you take roll and determine a quorum for us, please? Here.
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 Here. Here. Here.
Here.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is going to be the Pledge of Allegiance. In the last several months, we started this with, as COVID came on, asking students and individuals in the community if they would be willing to record themselves for the pledge. And it's gotten great reviews, and so we are continuing that. So tonight, recorded for us, we have the Mighty Muskie Marching Band. You will notice, you'll see on the screen in a moment, they are appropriately socially distanced, and they will be leading the pledge tonight. So I would ask if the audience would stand with me, and we will be led in the pledge. We thank the band for taking time out of one of their morning practices to record that for us, and I certainly, I did tell their directors I probably owe them one now, so we appreciate that. Next on our agenda is our Student Council update.
Hello, I'm Gabriel Salazar, and I am the sophomore class president.
And I'm Brendan Steele, and I am the sophomore class vice president. And as many of you know, homecoming week is early again this year. We are so excited to be able to have a homecoming week this year and are very thankful that the district is allowing us to have many of the same events and traditions in years past. Because of COVID-19, we have modified all of our events in order to comply with social distancing regulations, accommodate our unique hybrid schedule, and be inclusive of all students. Below are the events that Student Council is running for the week. This year's homecoming theme is Dancing Through the Decades. Spirit Day themes run on a 2-day schedule, so both the A and B students can participate. Some of the theme days include 70s hippies, 80s tacky tourist day, 90s fashion, and the 2000s, and finally, vintage muskie spirit.
Yesterday, we hosted a modified senior march where students that wanted to attend walked around the MHS track where we provided Subway lunchbox meals and that they ate on the football field socially distanced. We also called seniors into the building in small groups to place their handprints on the senior wall. We will have alternative dates for those who cannot attend to place their handprints on the senior wall.
Earlier today, we hosted the coronation luncheon for the homecoming court members and their parents at the Geneva Country Club.
Right now, as we speak, the juniors versus seniors Powder Puff football game is going on at the high school. Cost to get in is $5, and all proceeds go to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
This Thursday, we are having the homecoming parade at 6 p.m., starting in front of Grant Elementary School, and the coronation immediately following afterward on the MHS football field.
On Friday, at the end of the school day, we will have our homecoming pep assembly on the football field. Seniors that are on their at-home day will also be able to attend, and we plan to live stream the events for the rest of the student body that is at home or virtual.
Unfortunately, due to COVID, we will not be having a homecoming dance this year. However, Student Council is brainstorming ideas, such as a school carnival, to be held in place of the dance at the end of October.
The following are the homecoming court candidates for this year. Please excuse me if I mispronounce these names. The male candidates are Timothy Nimley, Trevor Diedricks, Alicia Gay, Togue Desse, Joshua Thomas.
And the female candidates are Veda Matos, Sophia Emmert, Maria Villatoro, Hallie Hansen, and Kalian Salyers. Thank you.
Gentlemen, before you sneak away, does anyone have any questions about our student council update? It's so nice to see student faces. We appreciate you coming, and we appreciate your creativity along with your advisor to figure out how to make this week still special. I know it's dramatically different than what anybody's used to, and it sounds like you all did an awesome job on your planning. So, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We really appreciate your guys' cooperation with us this year, too. It really means a lot to the student body.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
The next portion of our agenda is our citizen speak portion of the agenda. I would ask that you limit comments to 3 minutes. Know that the board is not able to engage in conversation with you on a topic. I always like to remind our audience and those at home that we are all certainly, though, available anytime before and after meetings, and not just physically the few minutes before and the few minutes after. Our email addresses can all be found on the website as well. That makes for sometimes a more engaging conversation, but we are also would welcome anyone to the podium that would like to speak. I would ask that you start off by stating your name and address for the record so our board secretary can capture that.
Good evening, all. Nathan Mather, 2682 Tom Sawyer Road. Guys, I just want to thank you all for the hard work that you've been doing. I don't envy you. This is a very difficult time to be an educator, to be involved with education, to be a school board leader, and I wish you guys all the best. I hope that you continue to make good decisions and that folks understand the difficult position you're in. The reason I'm here tonight is to thank you and to advocate for mental health. I see that that is one of the recommended areas that you'll be voting on for advocacy with the legislature. I highly recommend that. Those of you who have been on the board for some time know the Mental Health Navigators program that we implemented and all the good that it does. And those of you, I suspect, who are more recent additions know about it too. It's a fantastic program. Especially now, I'm glad to see also student council involved in mental health. I read recently that during COVID and the shutdown that is imposed, something like 1 in 4 young Americans has contemplated suicide. And to me, that's an absolutely devastating number. So thank you for your work. I urge you to do everything you can to promote student mental health, and Godspeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. I know we have at least one other citizen speak. This is going to be a little bit out of the norm this evening, as I'm going to ask these ladies to introduce themselves, but they have a special award to give tonight to someone through the district, and we are excited that the weather and COVID has cooperated enough that they are able to join us tonight.
Well, thank you for having us. My name's Karen Steinman, and I am from the Muscatine Community School District, so I'm sort of open enrolled to this meeting, so. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Iowa Association of School Business Officials as a past president to present Mr. Tom Anderson with the Iowa ASBO Professional Leadership Award. The Professional Leadership Award is one of the highest honors that Iowa ASBO bestows upon its members. The awards are not just a measure of extraordinary deeds or a lengthy career. They are recognition of those school business officials who throughout their career and lifetime have demonstrated excellence in service to their school district, communities, and their profession. Awards are presented each year to 2 of the over 400 members, with award recipients receiving a scholarship to present to a graduating senior from the recipient school district, a plaque for your office, an invitation to the next Iowa ASBO Leadership Conference, and reimbursement of some travel expenses should you decide to go to the ASBO International Conference. Criteria considered in the selection includes leadership in the schools, leadership in profession, professional development, and leadership in the community. I've known Tom since he became a business manager way back when in West Liberty, and are we about 20 years maybe ago? And early on it became evident that he has a real passion for helping students through his work in the business office. He understands that it takes good physical health to provide success for students and that sound financial practices are necessary to carry out the district's goals and visions. Tom very much deserves his professional leadership award for many reasons. One of the greatest strengths of Iowa ASBO is its support of members and the desire of the members to help each other. Tom not only helps those who reach out to him, but has been willingly stepped up to serve on many committees and various committees throughout the IASBO and other Department of Ed and such places as that. The position of school business official requires continual training to maintain certification. Laws and regulation in school business change constantly, so training to ensure compliance is necessary. Tom's willingness to share his knowledge and expertise has earned him the respect and admiration of his peers. He has valuable leadership qualities. He is approachable, skilled, and has a passion for his chosen profession. It gives me enormous pleasure to present Tom with this well-deserved recognition. Congratulations, Mr. Anderson. And I had like 1,000 stories I could tell, but he's so worried about it, but.
Wait one second. Oh, I don't think it took. Of course, my phone is like, hang on 1 second. Or, I don't want to infringe on our 3 minutes. Okay, there you go. It's not taking. What's the deal? I don't know why. It's like all frozen up. There it is.
I heard it. Heard it that time.
There. Okay. We're not done talking.
I'm Nancy Blow, and I'm the director of the Iowa Association of School Business Officials. And we are pleased that Tom is receiving this award. Like Karen said, it's the highest honor that Iowa ASBO gives. We have over 400 members, probably more like 450 members. We have a member from every school district in the state, and he's nominated by his peers. We didn't get to pick him, his peeps did, so it's an especially great honor. And so a lot of them would like to have been here tonight, but they also have board meetings. So I wanted to read just a few things that some people said, and just to share this. They're good, Tom. Stop being so nervous. I know. I've known Tom professionally since 2005. Tom has served as a mentor to many and is currently president of our local IASBO chapter. I'm familiar with both the Muscatine and West Liberty communities where Tom hails from. I appreciate Tom's willingness to help others and have personally benefited from his knowledge in the field of school finance and board governance relationships. I wish Tom, his family, and his community all the best. Mr. Anderson is truly deserving of the Professional Leadership Award. Brianna. I've known Tom for 7 years. It's been great to see him grow professionally in his career. He is very knowledgeable when it comes to school business and has done a great job transitioning to a larger district. He had originally reached out to me when he considered Muscatine. I had no doubt he could handle it. He also has done a great job as regional director for our region. He's very organized and does a nice job of bringing in presenters. Most of all, you have to love his sense of humor. He's always good for a laugh and someone I consider a professional friend. Congratulations, Tom. Cindy. Tom has been a wonderful resource for me regarding anything school business related over the last 21 years, and a valuable leader in IASBO. Muscatine is very lucky to have him. Lisa. So, I have the scholarship. It's a $1,000 scholarship that Muscatine gets to share with the student on behalf of Tom winning it. So I just wanted to say one more thing. In all of my years with IASBO, and it's been more than 21, I've never seen school business officials under so much pressure and so much stress. And I say all the time that they take a situation and they know how to make it happen, no matter what it is. Through the last several years of declining allowable growth for school districts, school business officials are always like, just tell us what it is, we'll deal with it. You know, whether it's gonna be negative 1% or plus 10%, or, you know, just tell us what it is, we'll deal with it. And I always knew that they had that toughness, but this year especially, with all of the extra things that have been thrown on them, they have just stepped up to the plate, and I could not be prouder of them. Tom especially, our award winner. But thank you for having us tonight, and thank you for letting us have this little, you know, I apologize for last month. I was down to the moment when I was gonna try to come, but I live in Cedar Rapids. I couldn't even get down my street. It was just quite a phenomenal storm. But anyway, I apologize for the lateness of this, but we still honor Tom. You get to serve for the whole year in this capacity, you know.
Karen and Nancy, we appreciate you both coming for this event. And Karen, you can open enroll anytime with us. You have a standing invitation.
Thanks, but I think I've moved on. I even forgot it was the week for the CAR, so, you know, I've been retired 5 years, but I think I pretty much forgot it the first year. So, anyway, you guys have a good guy here. He's you're in good hands.
We want to sit right there.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Tom, congratulations. This year has certainly presented a lot of challenges, and they're right. You are you don't get away without that as well. And so how you are able to manage all that, we appreciate your efforts, and I appreciate you personally for the times that I can call and ask questions that may or may not send you a little over the edge. And you're always very patient and kind, and that means a great deal. So thank you for all your efforts. I wish you could see his face, because he's like, okay, move on to the next thing. The next section of our agenda covers board targets and goals. And I'm going to read those 3 goals. We keep this on our board agenda at each meeting so that as board members we have this in front of us. And it's students will graduate prepared for post-secondary options. Muscatine schools will utilize resources effectively and equitably, and students will learn in a positive and supportive environment. And that takes us to the next item, which is our Muskie Return to Learn update. And I'm going to pass it to Clint.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll just start off and a few comments on things tonight, and then I'll have some others share some information. Had the opportunity to present to Rotary today on our Return to Learn, did that virtually, but they had a good turnout, and so I was able to share some of that information. And right now, as I've been trying to update staff and update you kind of on a weekly basis, we've had so far 3 students that have tested positive and 2 staff members. To my knowledge, that has all occurred outside of school. We have less than 10 students who are being isolated or quarantined because of exposure. And again, to put that into perspective, I think I shared this with some others last week. We have some districts nearby that over 200 students are isolated. So, you know, my message to staff is what you're doing is working. We're wearing masks, we're socially distancing, and we're washing hands. Staff are, students are. And again, the message to staff, it's just as important what you do outside of your classroom as it is what you do inside your classroom. But again, our kids have done a great job. Our staff is doing a great job, so I really appreciate that. On our website, on the Return to Learn page, you will see that kind of that COVID tracker, the 14-day positivity average that we look for to see, it's going to tell us, are we getting closer to the point where we can start looking at other options about bringing kids back face-to-face more often, or are we looking at more remote options? What I'll tell you, over the past 2 weeks, actually, over the past month, that average has stayed between 6 and 8%. It bounces a little bit up and a little bit down each day. And that's just part of the way that metric is structured. And something we've said from the beginning, if we get to that 15% threshold or higher, there's a lot of activity happening in our community. So it will not be a surprise. But again, I think the community's been very supportive. Again, staff and students doing a great job. So I have no doubt that that will continue. So tonight we want to update you a little bit on a few topics in the teaching and learning realm. Also, I've asked Tom Olsis to come and share a little bit around activities and athletics. Some of those questions came up the last time. I thought it'd be good, especially with homecoming week, and as we're kind of entering more of the home game season, especially in football, and we've had some other tournaments and other games within our facilities. A good time to just bring that to the table as well. So with that, let's start with Tom, and then we'll move to teaching and learning.
Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to come in this evening. What I will do is share a little bit about where our Spectator, our fall guidelines currently stand. I will be the first to admit that this is really, it's a fluid document in the respect that we are still continuing to evaluate and see how we're doing with things. I kind of jokingly refer to this as version 4.0 of our Spectator guidelines for the fall. So I'll talk a little bit to start with where we are with venue capacity and how we're handling that, some of the high points, and then also some of the things that we're doing with our students and coaches as well to highlight that. Venue capacity, we now have moved, starting this week, to a game day ticket process for our home volleyball games and then for Friday night football as well. And this is being communicated via email and postings, social media wise, as well, as far as how many tickets are distributed to our players, our participants, and then if there are any extras due to the space. We feel very good about when we host activities in our gymnasium that we have a lot of space because of the size of our gymnasium and the upper and lower seating. We have a freshman volleyball game going on right now, so our freshman games we use just the upper deck seating. For one of the changes that we made for our sophomore through varsity volleyball nights, we'll play just one court during the night. We'll have the sophomore game in the main gym, and then the varsity or the JV game over in the Van Heck Center. Then we'll play the varsity game after the sophomore game is done. So this Friday we will be doing game day tickets as well for our football games. So the sophomore game is at first, with the varsity to follow. The process that we're using for those game day tickets, each of our football players, band members, Pom Squad members, cheerleaders, each get a set amount of tickets that they can distribute to family members or to friends if they don't have family members that are going to be attending. We also have a bank of tickets for community members or others if they would like to attend. We are asking for face masks, face coverings for our fans that attend the games. One of the difference as well is the elementary student guidelines and junior high student guidelines. So junior high and elementary students, if they come to the games, they need to be with an adult or with a parent, simply because a lot of times those younger students are moving around a lot. So that's something that'll be a little bit different as well. With our swim meets, that were our home swim meets, we are limiting fans as well for those swim meets with just home fans because of the limited amount of seating inside of Carver Pool. We were able to host a swim meet a week ago this past Saturday, and with that we had no fans come in. But the plus of that, we streamed a swim meet and then shared the link with all of the schools that were there. So that was really the best way to do that meet with the limited amount of space and trying to figure out where to situate the teams inside of Carver Pool. So We do have some volleyball meets in the future that will also be streamed by Discover Muscatine, and swim meets as well. And so those are in addition to the regular Friday night football games that Discover Muscatine frequently streams for us. So some additional high points in our efforts with kids and coaches. Face coverings we provided for our fall athletes and our fall coaches. I've really also stressed with our coaches the importance of as you schedule practice and as you plan for practice, to schedule in segments less than 15 minutes. If you're going to be addressing the team, or if you're going to have a practice segment where the students are doing a specific thing or they're near the same groups. So keep those practice segments, keep those speeches shorter than perhaps you were doing in the past. Make sure you're also aware of where the student athletes are at, whether if it's a speaking session and you've got them spaced out, or what's going on in those practice areas. We're sanitizing shared equipment. In volleyball, that basically means volleyballs and taking care of sanitizing those. The volleyball tournaments that we hosted, we would sanitize the team benches if the teams changed spots. So we'd take a little bit of time between matches, sanitize the chairs the kids were sitting on, and then move on to the next round of matches. One of the things that's been really impressive to view actually is the process that football program is using to sanitize helmets and shoulder pads at the end of the practice. Everything is taken off, jersey, shoulder pads, helmet put on the ground, just lined up, and then our coaches go down the line and sanitize with the appropriate materials. Since that was a requirement by the state, was to sanitize those materials at the end of the practice. So the football program's been doing a good job with that as well. With that, I will kind of pause, and if you have some questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. If I don't have the answer, I'll definitely try to get the answer figured out for all of you.
Tom, are there any special, how they handle concessions, or how fans go to concessions, what's offered at concession stand? Has that changed at all?
The biggest change with concession stands is the fact that what may have been self-serve in the past cannot be self-serve. So, which really that's condiments for the most part, is we haven't been, unfortunately yet, been able to really do a lot of concession sales. This coming Friday will be our first home football Friday night, so we're finalizing some details with that. The only thing that really changes is how you do condiments and self-serve. So as long as you're providing a method to try to keep the customers spaced out and your workers are in gloves, masks, and so forth, you're able to do your regular concession food. So
I thought I saw last week that PV had kind of everything. I thought they offered self-contained stuff only, or self-packaged.
yeah, I know they offered kind of probably a lesser menu than they had in the past, it looked like, because they had some prepackaged items and they had Chick-fil-A sandwiches that they sell there.
So how does that affect your revenues? I mean, I know you're gonna obviously have a loss of ticket sales, but are you still getting the same advertising that you had? I know we used to do like the fall booklets where there was that type of advertising.
We've had really a positive response from our sports program advertising sponsors. We offered some new and different methods of advertising that some of our sponsors jumped on to try to provide value to them. The advertising booklet itself, I'm not 100% sure because we've been finalizing that the last week. We lost a few advertisers that chose not to do it this year for whether it was personal and how their business was going or just other reasons, but for the most part, that stayed strong, and then we've been able to add some new opportunities as well.
I know that ticket sales weren't the primary way that's not your main income, but
Yeah, and we know.
you take a hit on every aspect of it is what I'm worried
Concessions actually with the Muskie Boosters is kind of one of the areas that I'm the most concerned about with that, and there's some just unsettled and questions with some of that. So and concessions are the Muskie Boosters' largest moneymaker during the year, so we're trying to work on that as well.
What kind of, when you say sanitizing, like the helmets and everything else, I guess I'm curious, what do you use to sanitize? How's that accomplished?
So with the there's 3 different types of sanitizing that we've done in the past several weeks and really the fall season so far. When we hosted the volleyball tournament, when we were sanitizing the team bench chairs, we used the Santa Spritz product that our custodial staff, maintenance and custodial staff had provided. When we sanitize volleyballs, footballs, there's an appropriate soapy water mix that we're able to use, so we just use a spray bottle. There's a ratio of powdered soap to water, spray it on, and then wipe it off. With the football, helmets, and shoulder pads, because we're outside and there's enough fresh air available, we use a bleach water mix and just spray it on, and they go down the line. And we're able to do that. It meets the guidelines, but we're able to do it because it's outside and we don't have concern about small area and anybody asthmatic being around. So that's why we're not using that inside at all. But those are the three main ways that we're sanitizing.
Good, thank you.
Tom, I think we've come a long way from this summer in some of the policies and procedures. I think they've gotten a lot more consistent. How do you think that the teams and the coaches and the players are adhering to all these guidelines?
I think personally, from interacting, I think face coverings are the things that our students have the hardest time with in trying to that and keeping them spaced apart when they're not doing anything. It's easy when they're involved in something, but that during those times when in a football football game, when they're on the sideline and they're not playing, it's kind of a constant of spreading them out. There's greater sideline space available. I think the coaches have done a really good job with their practice planning and being really purposeful with how they're doing that, and also doing a good job with wearing masks as well, face coverings as well. I know from freshman volleyball game tonight and freshman football game that was going on, our coaches had face coverings on and mask on, whether they were outside where it was nice and cool and very pleasant. It was warmer in the gym, but both the freshman volleyball coaches had their mask up. So I think it's a kind of a constant struggle and constant battle with that.
I understand. I have a senior myself, so I understand those struggles. I think the streaming has been fantastic. I know it's gotten me to watch more events, and I think that's been great for the community. If there's anything else that you need, what would it be? What would you?
That I don't have a good answer for right now. I mean, I think we kind of keep trying to navigate our way through, and it's kind of a constant daily situation. I mean, one of the things that the students that are out for sports this fall, we use a set of screener questions every day as well to kind of hopefully be on the front end of helping our students be aware of like whatever's going on in their life. They have any different symptoms of anything. One of the most challenging aspects of that is so many of the symptoms are similar to a lot of the other things that are going on in their life as well. So I mean, the thing that we're really is the most uncertain is trying to figure out and plan for, some of those revenue shortages that are going to happen. And that's what I've been talking to some of the teams and coaches about to help them plan, and we'll see where it goes.
Tom, I have two questions. One is, you mentioned there could be tickets for the community. How would they get those? How would they find those? How were you publicizing those? That's the first question. Second question is, this is kind of getting the cart ahead in front of the horse, but any concerns coming winter sports, because there are a lot of winter sport kids right now that are seeing the success that we've had with volleyball and with football. Do you have concerns about winter sport and everything being indoor because of what that brings?
I think with the first question, and this is what we're trying to get the word out, contact the athletic office for the game day tickets. With that, and the thing we also always try to stress as well, a game day ticket, that gives you the opportunity to buy a ticket. That's not your entry into the game, so we always kind of joke about that. With the winter sports, I mean, I think volleyball gives us some good insight into the avenue of our winter sports since it is inside. The thing that's most challenging, I think, in projecting and looking into the winter just is the fact that we know typically in that late fall, in that winter area, we start to get more into that cold and flu season, and there will be so many things going on that that it's worrisome. I think thankfully with the facilities that we have and the size of our facilities, we will be able to do a good job with practices, with crowds, and though we'll have to limit things, but I think that'll be a positive if the rates continue to stay consistent or we don't see a spike in things. So it's that unknown, we just don't know.
Tom, did I see in the announcements that the tickets available to the community is 40 or 50 for this week?
Right
or
now,
this
there's
Friday?
50.
50
Yeah.
available, so
Yeah.
if people want them, they should probably contact you
Now,
early,
soon, yeah.
early rather than later?
Yep.
Are we allowing the visiting to have people?
So yes, we are allowing visiting fans, and that's a smaller number that they're allotted. We've been so far we've been to 3 away football games: North Scott, Clear Creek, Amana, and then Pleasant Valley this past Friday. North Scott, which was week 1, they did not do any type of limitations or guidelines. They just required face mask. Clear Creek, Amana, their limit was 3 tickets per football player and 2 tickets per cheerleader. Pleasant Valley did 2 tickets per football rostered player and coach. So we're doing for our visitors when they come in, I would probably say Pleasant Valley maybe had a little more visitor bleacher space than we did, but we're doing 2 per rostered football player and coach.
Okay, thank you, Tom, for being here tonight. Just a couple of things to follow up. I think the streaming has been great. Even some opportunities with the weather has not been as nice to still catch some of those events, so I've appreciated that. Also on a call last week with County Health, with some members around districts from around the county. Just some kudos to the district, to Muscatine, for how we've handled some things specifically with volleyball tournaments, and just they thought it was handled really well, that kids did a great job, was well organized, and adults were doing a good job as well. So I appreciate all the effort in getting that set up. So, and with that, we'll transition to teaching and learning. So Joelle McConaughey and Becky Witchers, I'm going to have them. They've put some information at your spot, and we'll just kind of have them run through that and answer any questions for you.
All right, you have a packet, and there's several documents that you have copies of that Joelle and I will be referring to. You also have them digitally too, so you can have either or. So a few of the questions that kind of came about in this Return to Learn update, one of them had to do with special ed. So you have a document that says Muscatine Community School District Special Education Return to Learn Guidebook. So the Iowa Department of Education added a new page I to the IEP. So the purpose of this document is for the IEP team to discuss what instruction and series and supports, what they would look like for the student in a virtual or hybrid setting that has an IEP. So beginning on August 19th, all special education teachers began holding parent IEP meetings and having those conversations about what services will be needed and how it will look like virtually. So you've got, enclosed in this document, we created this guidebook to help our special education teachers with this process. The Department of Ed and the AEA also put together, and I'm going to refer you to this document. It's called a compendium of resources for district schools and IEP teams. And basically, this is just a tool to assist teams in addressing the standards within IDEA and under the current pandemic situation. So I feel that our teachers have a lot of support and a lot of examples of what services can look like and be delivered in a virtual way. So those 2 guidance have been really helpful. What we were told is every student actually gets a page I, but start with your kiddos that have IEPs in either virtual or hybrid, and then your in-person ones do those at a later date. So what we're asking teachers to do is by October 6th, they have all their page I's done. So we've got a really good turnaround. Our virtual kids, parents that chose virtual learning, those IEP meetings were held, most of them virtual, some face-to-face, and there's specific questions, and you can see those in the guiding document, what those questions are. Parents have just been really, really appreciative of what the school is trying to offer. I would say really good conversation, because again, we've never done this, and so it's been really neat to see teachers thinking, oh, this is how we did this in person. What would it look like in electronic format or virtually? So that's just been a really, really good guide for teachers in regards to special ed. Another question was about restoring hope. So restoring hope was basically kind of a grassroots idea to support kiddos, gen ed kiddos and kids with IEPs, because we saw kind of an uptick that there was a need. Well, due to families choosing virtual learning, the numbers just didn't support continuing Restoring Hope for this fall. Having only 10 weeks of data, we started that mid-January, and everything kind of came to a little halt March 12th. So making that decision for what is best right now, we feel that the return to learn has been our priority. We will definitely look and evaluate this second semester and determine next steps. So we currently had 6 kids, and of those 6, 5 chose virtual, and our other little kiddo was already receiving support through an IEP, so we felt pretty confident with that. So we're just kind of putting the pause button on that for right now. Joelle's going to kind of share a little bit with virtual and numbers, and so I'll stay up here, but I'll let you take over.
Okay. So I provided a one-pager here, and basically what this is just to kind of review a little bit or give you an overview of some of the professional learning that is taking place in our schools. So our first early out is this Wednesday, and we have been working as a pre-K through 12th grade continuum support for all of our teachers around 2 different areas. One area is professional learning communities supporting the need of unfinished learning and addressing priority standards. So we've been working, the teachers this Wednesday will be getting together in departments and grade level meetings to address that unfinished learning, the priority standards, and then working together to support the needs of students and what that will look like back in classrooms. The other piece that we have been focused on is the technology piece. Teachers, instructional coaches, Tristan Toll, Scott Comstock, and others have really just been chunking the technology learning for teachers and making sure that all teachers in our district, both core and non-core, feel supported in the work that they need to do to meet students' needs. So I provided just under the action steps some of the topics and things that we've been working on specifically to help teachers. Then on the back of the one-pager, there is an update on virtual and in-person numbers. And so, of course, these can change on a day-to-day basis, but this was as of Friday. Last week, Friday, all of the section numbers, and I think that we've been able to do a really good job of keeping section numbers at a good number to be able to meet needs of students through social distancing and keeping class sizes smaller. We do have a couple little areas that, a couple sections that are a little bit higher. The McKinley 3rd grade class size, we will be addressing that this week, and then also the virtual numbers up in 5th and 6th grade. We have been, those numbers are around 30 to I think 35 at the highest. We have provided extra instructional coaches to support those teachers at those grade levels, so that we're able to get math and reading down to smaller sizes for those teachers. And then we've also been able to provide extra instructional coach support in the Mulberry section as well. So those are just kind of an overview of the different numbers. We did have quite a few parents at the very beginning, right before virtual started, who wanted to switch models because just different reasons. Sometimes jobs changed or they just had different situations occur. We were able to meet the needs of all of our parents' requests. And now we are, kind of holding to give the kids a chance just to work in either virtual or in person for a little while before we do any other requests. So it's just a case-by-case basis now if parents have a concern. The schedules, they're attached here, so you could see an example of a preschool, a kindergarten through 6th grade, a junior high, and a high school schedule. These are samples. At the preschool and elementary, anything that is in purple means the teacher is meeting with the whole group. Anything in yellow means it's small group or students are working independently on assignments. The grays are areas that kids are off screen. So I tried to color code that a little bit for both parents and for you guys, just so you could kind of look at the difference in the time that kids are on screen and off. And I know I'm going really quick and I'll stop here. I'm almost done. And for questions, the last part are just a few updates. I've attached the MCSD, the pre-K-12 testing schedule for the year, so you can see when the different assessments are occurring throughout the school year. And then some exciting news, we were able to hire a help desk position this semester, and that position was to help support families, parents, and students if they had questions at home in regards to virtual learning. And that help desk position has actually helped both our parents, students, and teachers. I think the first week we were like at a 90 to 100 calls a day, I think we were at, and it's since kind of plateaued around 20 calls a day that we're supporting. The help desk position is also supporting parents, like once they signed up for virtual, if they wanted to come over to the board office, we could help them get all set up on their laptop and offer that support for our families as well. And then lastly, we are going to be surveying all pre-K-12 families, and I will summarize all those results for you and present those at our next board meeting. But basically, we are asking parents, students, and teachers just to give us feedback on how things are going so far so that we can make adjustments if we need to. And then those areas that we're doing well and to kind of celebrate those, because that's been a big change, and I know it's been a challenge for a lot of our staff. So we want to celebrate as well. So that is a really fast overview of kind of what's happening with teaching and learning, unless you wanted to add anything else.
If there's any questions that any of you have?
How is the connectivity with the internet and the online learning, since we had some, partnership with MPW and some other, businesses and the CARES Act? Is that pretty good? We've
had a good response. We've got, again, I think the conversations with MPW to get that set up, just a great example of good community partnerships in order to get that established. I think, again, having that help desk person where people can call in and get some resources and making sure things are working properly. But, I think our numbers have been strong. I'm not even sure how many we're still short in terms of installation. Lisa, do you know if yeah. I mean, I know MPW was really prioritizing their installation process to make sure they could get those kids up and running as soon as possible. And then as school has gone on, we're getting fewer of the calls that they don't have access, which is a good thing.
And I think Scott Comstock also offered some little hot spots for some of our families
Outside
too.
of MPW.
Outside of MPW and
Scott,
those.
do you know off the top of your head how we're doing numbers wise? Are those installs coming in pretty well?
Yeah, so I think we started out with 100 hotspots and we've given out 40 now. So we're just watching those lists, making sure as parents let us know that they are in need. If they're outside of Muscatine Power and Water service area, that they can get a cellular hotspot. We also want to make sure that we're really hoping that they will use MPNW when they're in town because it's a better product. Anybody that's used a cellular hotspot knows it's just not as good as a direct connection. So, but MPNW has been great to work with so far.
Joel, excuse me, I have a question. Well, whether I'm a 10th grade student on a virtual level or second grade student on a virtual level, beside, I'm connected via the internet versus face-to-face, what will be one major difference between the two groups?
So the difference between like a virtual classroom and an in-person?
Yeah.
Well, I would say that the challenge for the teachers would be in a in-person classroom, they can go over to the student and help them. So for example, if they need help, with getting on the right page or getting whatever. And on virtual, they're not able to go directly, and help them. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. But I would say, as far as the teachers who are teaching virtually and in person are working together to make sure that the education that's being delivered to the student is equitable, because that is one, concern that we really want to make sure that whether you're virtual or whether you're in person, that you're still getting, that same quality of education. So,
And if I am a virtual student and I need extra help,
right.
what will be the process for that?
So the teachers all have time at the end of the day. It's like, I think from like 2:15 to 3:05. And so any of those students, they can pull in during that time and work with one-on-one or in small groups. We are also providing EL service, Title I reading support, gifted and talented, so, all of those services still apply to our students that are virtual. If the help is needed beyond what the teacher can do, we follow the same process as we would in person. Every school has a student support team. And so if a student is struggling with attendance or any academic area, those students go through the school student support team. And on that team are, maybe the navigator, the counselor, instructional coaches, administrators. And so we're really making sure that, if they do need any help, that we're addressing that at the home school of that student. And we want to maintain that relationship, between the homeschool and the student. And we also want to make sure that we get that support to the kids right away. So I know, like, for example, last Friday, there were already out doing some home visits on some kiddos that maybe were just struggling with being able to get on. I know, like, the navigators have been assisting families. I know technology, if we have any kind of, we just really want to make sure we're really responsive, I guess, is both for the teacher and for the kids if they're having any need. Yeah.
Thank you.
And John, I would say to piggyback off of that, because my daughter's in my house teaching virtually, the connectivity side of it, Denny, the kids are really resilient, and for the most part, they get bumped off once in a while, but they'll come back on, and there hasn't been a huge issue. There's not a lot of stress in my house because of that. So I'm kind of like, okay, that's good, right? And I believe that all the teachers, I know that the 5th grade teachers, that her group, the communication, the class dojo, my daughter's getting calls or emails anytime. and she's comfortable with that, and the parents are comfortable with that. So I think the communication from that side of it, at least I'm taking it again and saying that if it's happening at one grade level, it should be happening at every grade level. So I think that the parents, I don't want to speak for all the parents, but what I'm seeing seems very positive. I'm happy with that side of it. So I don't want to put words in you guys' mouth, but I can speak from experience. So.
No, and they are all using Class Dojo,
Right.
both in person and virtually, so that's been helpful, yes.
And I wanted to bring a little bit with that too, just because I've seen with the resilience of the kids, even being a substitute teacher. But I'd like to think that the stuff that we did already to have navigators on board and other things we've had, it's almost like, oh my God, did we know this was going to be happening to us? Because having that group of special team I think is something that's going to really help us through all of this very well. So thank you for that. But my question then actually is, this is a really good breakdown of where we're at on where the students are at. Do we have an idea? I don't remember hearing you say, like, especially for the kids that have an IEP and such, that how many ended up wanting to do homeschool themselves for their kids?
Actually, at the end of last year, we had 99 students in homeschool and in the homeschool assistant program. We currently have 124. So raw numbers, but an uptick of 25 students. Many of those 25, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but many of them are dual enrolled. So they are accessing our curriculum in some areas and then homeschooling in the others. So I was kind of surprised. I kind of thought we might see a big swing with homeschool or the homeschool assistant, dual enrolled, and there hasn't been as much thus far.
Is the dual part meaning that there's certain core areas or something that is better equipped to do?
It's a parent choice. So the parents might say, I want to dual enroll and I want my child to have access to ELA and math. So they would attend and get work during ELA and math, but then they would be homeschooled. The parent would be responsible for the rest of it. So many parents dual enroll for various reasons in different courses. The state of Iowa did do something different this year with IEPs. Typically, if you went homeschool, then that IEP kind of stayed dormant. Now the IEP is active. If the parents dual enroll, then that IEP stays active, and so they get their special ed minutes during that dual enrollment time. So that's been kind of a change. So we have had probably, off the top of my head, maybe 6 parents that students had an IEP but chose to dual enroll, so that the IEP remains active and they're getting services, which is nice, because they're getting a little bit of school, virtual in-person instruction. So that's been a change that's been different than in the past.
Becky, is there a cap on how many people can homeschool, or?
No.
So, but do we offer more support is there a ratio of any type? Or is it we just have to have one person and everybody could,
Well, they have to follow the guidelines. So homeschool, there's guidelines. Kat Netzel and Becky Nertz, they are the 2 homeschool coordinators. So there's scheduled visits. So they're meeting with families on curriculum, checking in, giving them support. I don't believe that there's a cap. Yeah, I could get a specific answer from Kat Netzel for you, if you'd like.
That just seemed like it's a 25% increase, and I didn't know. I'm guessing that their time was probably pretty busy last year, and we just increased by 25%. And do we know?
Right. So we had to apply for special permission to have that many students, but the state doesn't necessarily say you can only have so many, and then the next person that calls, you have to say no, thank you. It doesn't work that way. But we had to get special permission. I want to say their ratio is maybe to 40 to 50 students that they can work with.
And then the funds still stay within our area then?
If they dual enroll, we do get some funding for them.
Yes.
It's not full funding, but we do get some.
It's 0.3 for homeschool assistants and 0.1 for the dual enroll.
So it's 0.4.
Yep.
Thank you.
Do we know if you got me spinning now, you guys brought it. Do we know if the 99 kids, are they still part of this 124? Because I would have kind of thought, in my mind, I thought that we would have had less people do the homeschool because we offered virtual. They would have probably kicked their kids to the virtual side of it. So do we know if those same 99 are part of that 124, or is that like 50 of them were homeschooled last year and we have 75 new ones?
Yeah, I mean, I can get that. I can get those numbers for you
I
from
don't have them
Kat,
tonight.
but-
That's something
Yeah,
we
I
can
don't have
certainly
those
look
for
at.
you.
What I would say, and I think Lisa could probably speak to this too, because she ends up having a lot of conversations with people on the phone. Whether it's going to our virtual or going to the state virtual program or going homeschool and dual enrolling, every family has kind of this unique story and why it works for them, why they want to do that. And so we have families that have taken the kind of the state virtual option as opposed to our option, only because there's no restrictions or requirements in terms of, what you do when you do that. You just kind of do it and you're totally on your own time. And that works better for their family. Where we have teachers, because of staffing issues, where we have to have them at certain times of the day, which means for those virtual kids, they've got to log in and be there at certain times of the day. So again, it's very unique to individual families why they've made those different decisions. And again, we're trying to keep as many kids in our system as possible. So, we'd rather have them dual enroll in that homeschool program than go full homeschool or go to a different virtual option.
Absolutely. Just two more questions, I swear. And then Karen can cut me off no matter what. I saw in the packet that by October 6th, our kids with IEPs, we should have met with everybody and revised, because I guarantee that we didn't plan for any of the IEPs to be dealing with COVID, right? None of those were planned for when they wrote those. So that's taken place then.
Right, so.
A lot of the ones, and having been part of that and done it, having seen 200 IEPs, how are we doing the para support? Is that an issue, or is that a concern, or?
No, actually, that's in that Return to Learn guide. There's some para support, roles of para educators in an in-person example, and then roles in a virtual sample. So as you know, our para educators are vital with support. Now, they don't do any instruction. Our teachers do the instruction, but they are able to back them up and meet with them. So they are working with small groups possibly, or a child, giving them support after the direct instruction has happened. But there's kind of some examples on roles of para educators.
Okay, I'll read through that. Then my other question would be for Joelle. What are the blue, the 25, 25, 27? I know that when we did our Return to Learn plan, the plan was that kids were everybody was going to wear a mask unless you get socially distanced. And I'm guessing the average class size, I don't know the average class size that we have, but do all of those classes allow to social distance, and what's that kind of break?
Right.
Because if you have 25 kids, you need to have 750 square feet, basically, right? Probably closer to 900 square feet to accurately social distance. And if you can't social distance in those classrooms, are those kids wearing their masks all day?
So, so there are lots of different things kind of happening. So one, in some classrooms, they have like mask breaks, and so there's an area designated, in the room where kids can go over and do mask breaks whenever they feel like that. I know the administrators have been working with paras, like building paras in the class buildings, where they go and they take kids, groups of kids out and just get them outside, and they can take their masks off and things like that. I know also with instructional time, there's time during the day where teachers have the kids, at a table, for example, where they might be working with a smaller group. And so those students that are closer to the teacher and closer proximity, they all have their masks on, but then that alleviates some space out here where kids can spread out. So I think it depends, because like all class sizes are different square feet. Some have different numbers, some have different resources. But I do know that all teachers have found really creative ways and administrators to give these kids breaks, from their masks.
And I think just along those lines too, Mike, I know we've had, in one of our buildings, we had a classroom, I think it was a 6th grade, it was a 5th or 6th grade classroom, they know was gonna be larger. They exchanged rooms with a different room in the building that was bigger, so they could do that. It also requires, again, teachers have been really creative about what are the things that are in my room that I've kind of always had in my room that maybe I don't really need this year to again, get a little more of that space back. So again, they've done a really good job of that.
And I also know teachers are doing like outside classrooms as well, so they're taking their kids outside and trying to do some, learning that can be outside where kids can spread out more. So yeah, I think they've been pretty creative.
I'd like to be able to say that I did take the chance before school started. I went to Madison School. She was great to have me over really fast because I know she was quite busy, and did a little tour. And it also happened to be a day when some of the instruction, in fact, I think I saw you up on the screen to be exact. But what's really cool about it was how everything was set up and how all the supplies in the gym was boom, 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 ready to go for everybody and that. So everything was well thought out and was to be able to do it. So it made me a lot more comfortable with what things were to go. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think one kind of amazing thing really is that at every single school, teachers and principals and parent support staff, they all kind of have worked together to figure out what works best for their building. And it's not all exactly the same, and I think that's okay, but they found ways to make it work for them and their kids, so.
I just want to say thank you and kudos to the whole staff and team. This summer, I asked a couple questions. I didn't see how it was going to be possible to do what you did, and it looks like you did it. I've been at the schools, outside the schools. I see the kids wearing their masks even when they're outside, which is amazing to me. And so congratulations on that. I do have a couple questions. One is, how's attendance been? And if I take Mike's house gauge, my daughter is doing her homework now, where in the spring there was like nothing going on. So something is happening, at least at the high school level. So thank you to that. But how's attendance been with the students, and participation really, if you call it that, or attendance? And then two, what's our enrollment look like? I think the date's gonna be in early October, where we understand what our enrollment is, and how does that look relative to last year where we thought it would be?
I don't know.
Okay.
I can start with the enrollment
Start with
question. We're gonna be down. We've got more people taking the virtual option. That's not within our district. We've had, it's just those numbers are not where we'd want them to be. But again, this is kind of an unusual year. We've had multiple factors on that. So we have more out that are coming in. And we've had that kind of declining enrollment, and so when you add that to more out than in, we're gonna continue to move in that direction.
Do we have an idea, or are we not willing to share yet, which is fine if we don't know, but do we have?
I don't have the
For what, attendance?
Enrollment.
Oh, for enrollment? Well, I think that what we have right in front of you is what we have for enrollment as of Friday. I don't have it added up, but those are our in-person and virtual numbers, so I can go through those. I do know many parents I've talked to, they want to come back, if we go back to in-person, and they're kind of watching numbers, so obviously that doesn't help for the official enrollment count day, but I can address the attendance question. So our attendance, I know we just did a very rough draft of that, and I'm hoping I don't say this wrong because Gwen will correct me, I know. I think it was anywhere from 4% to, I think, was it 9?
For chronic?
Yeah, 4 to 9% of our school, in each school it was around that percentage. Some of those numbers, we, know that some of our students didn't have internet getting started. We knew some of the kids hadn't connected, and so when we met about 2 weeks ago, all the schools identified those students that were having attendance issues for whatever reason. And they were reaching out to families to really ensure doing some home visits, making phone calls, because some kids didn't have internet, but that it wasn't as many as what we were seeing not attending. And so, so I know that there was a big, huge push to get out and connect with every single student and family. So, but I would say the percents were a little bit lower than what, well, probably more in average.
And
than
we
what
can sure get you
usually
those
did.
numbers.
Yeah,
It'd be nice to maybe have accurate numbers and
Yeah,
first,
that's
so
fine.
We'll sure get that
I
for you.
just glanced at our first month, and I know the lowest was like 3 or 4%, and our highest was around, I feel like it was like 7 or 8%.
I know we were concerned about virtual and hybrid and attendance last year, you know, just hearing from some of the schools that were trying to do that at the spring of last year. So I was wondering where that was, and if it was higher or lower than even our previous years. Is it?
I think it's gonna be really hard to compare just because it's so different. So for example, I'll give you, like at elementary, the kids come back on and they can't all tell time. So the teachers were setting, you know, things on their little computers for them that would like go off when it was time for them to come back on. And I think parents were adjusting as well, you know, trying to go between several kids. So we were, you know, the first few weeks, I think you just have to be a little more lenient as people are trying to just navigate it both at school and at home. Parents, I think, were trying really hard to, you know, do that as well. But I think things have settled a lot, and so hopefully we'll have a better comparison like next month.
And a couple of, just a couple of comments along that lines too. One of the changes this year is, in the past, we were doing kind of a centralized attendance. So if your child was out, you would call kind of this district number and report them as absent. Just with COVID and what we've had to kind of track in conversations, we switched that back to doing it at the building, where you call the building secretary or somebody in that office is making contact with you. And again, part of that is to do more follow-up, you know, as we're looking at symptoms and why they're gone. But also the piece that was missing is just that relationship between the building and families. Like, I know this family, you build those relationships, and that helps keep kids coming to school. So I think that's gonna, over time, we're gonna see some improvement in our attendance. We've recently adjusted how we take attendance at the high school and the junior high, with having kids log in and you know, kind of check in that they're there. Again, what we have to separate is attendance versus engagement. Same thing happens when they come to school. They're there, they may not be engaged, right? It just gets problematic if in the system that we had previously, just, you know, a few weeks ago as we started, if it was all based on getting your homework done, so now we've got a 2 or 3 day assignment, if that's a late, am I counted absent for those 3 days? I mean, so we need a different metric to measure our kids there. And then is that an issue of access, and what are the other barriers, and how do we follow up on that? So I think we'll continue to see that tighten up, especially we know every year, those first couple of weeks, you know, people realize, oh, hey, school has started, I saw a bus go by, we should probably start going now. So we're still kind of getting some of that cleaned up too.
Sure, I get it's gonna change in the beginning. I just think it's a pretty important metric for us to keep track of here at the board this year especially, so kids don't get left behind. And I agree, engagement is much more important than attendance. But whatever way we can measure that and make sure that our kids are participating as much, if not more than they were before, I think would be helpful. And I know it's gonna be more difficult this year, but I think it's critical that we watch that metric as we go through.
And Aaron, too, there's somebody assigned, like Julie Stone King is kind of watching the virtual elementary, and then there's a point person at junior high and high school. So we are really making sure like all those home visits are happening for those connections and everything. So we know we're gonna have to work a little bit harder, especially at the virtual kiddos, so yeah.
I also think at some point, this is just my guess, the state's gonna ask us for the data on those virtual and hybrid kids. I'm not sure they're super fond of the online and hybrid models, I think, again, there's some, that's conversation down the road, but we need to have that data in place too, and have a good way to really track that, and I think this newer system will help us do that.
Aaron, the one thing I would be concerned with, again, I think that one of our goals is always to prepare our kids for post-secondary, right? Well, we have a perfect opportunity, at least for our high school. Middle school might be a little bit early for that, but all of our kids that are doing things virtually, or even the ones that are doing the hybrid right now, that's a post-secondary type of environment. You know, you get your stuff every other day, and you go and you work on it on your own, and you come back with questions, and you have to solve problems. So I don't want us to focus as, I guess me personally, I don't want the focus to be on attendance as much as, are you getting the information we need? Are you becoming a good learner? Are you staying engaged? The engagement side of it, and because I don't think all of us work the same way. You know, I like to do my work at 10 o'clock at night till 2 o'clock in the morning. So if you ask me to check in at 9 o'clock, I might be there, but I'm probably not there. And I think that that's what Clint was saying again. So I don't want to really, I understand and I agree with the fact that being there, being present is important, but I don't think that that's the main purpose of what we need to try to accomplish or what we want our kids to learn. You know, so I'm a little leery just saying that we want attendance to be our number one metric.
No,
I didn't
mean that it was a number one metric. I just meant it's a metric we've tracked in the past. It's something the building principals pay very close attention to. And I think we need to know this year where we are relative to where we've been so that we're not losing kids. And if we can measure engagement or progress, even better. I'm fine with that. But I think this year as a board, we need to be more attentive to some of those metrics.
And I would go back to, and I don't want to dominate the conversation, really I don't, but going back to my own house, in my daughter's classroom, kids they do have trouble coming back on time sometimes, but for the most part, they're getting their stuff done. And if they're not getting their stuff done, there's a conversation between parents, grandparents, some type of guardian, and saying, hey, where's my kid at? And from a task completion kind of thing, from staying current on caught up with what's happening in the classroom, I think that they're probably pretty good. And I mean, again, I'm looking at through an administrative eyes, through parents' eyes, through, you know, teachers' eyes. I'm like, that's a pretty good rate of engagement, really, or completion. And I'm not so much with task completion either, but if your task completion isn't geared towards learning, then you probably shouldn't be doing the task, right? So I'm assuming learning is taking place with the task completion, so.
Well, I think, you know, if you are not there, you are not engaged. And even if you are there, there's no guarantee that you will be engaged too. I mean, we are in that business in education. I mean, that's very important. And it seems to me that we have to be almost 24/7 kind of business now in order to cater to our students. But yeah, I do agree that the metrics of that attendance is important for us to keep tracking of. And I'm hoping that we come up with some sort of metrics to see or measure their engagement or our students' engagement, because they do go hand in hand, and so that's very important.
I'm going to take a step back for all of those watching right now and the thousands that will watch later. Everybody in the room has thrown around IEP. For those who don't know, what does that mean? What does IEP stand for?
IEP, Education Plan, Individual Education Plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the second thing, Joelle, I asked you the question, I think a month or so ago. You have an early out this Wednesday, and you said that in buildings that staff had an opportunity to decompress and what that looks like. How has that been? Has it been more fluid than that? I'm sure you've had to make some adjustments on the fly. Are staff happy with the timeliness of the ability to get to their building principal or somebody to make adjustments that are needed? What's that look like?
Yeah, so we, earlier I said we were doing surveys, but those are more like with our virtual, and our hybrid teachers, so that would be with all secondary teachers and then some elementary. We have had to do some adjustments, you know, just to be honest, around the technology piece. You know, just like kids, we have teachers that are all different levels, and so I know they met, Clint and Becky and a couple of them met to make sure we had instructional coaches who could be back at the building supporting teachers and technology. So we've had to do different adjustments, but yes, I feel like teachers have been in close contact with administrators, and as an administrative team, we've met and kind of looked at where are we ready to move forward, where do we probably need to put the brakes on just a little bit and provide a little more support. So yes, adjustments have been made, and again, we want to keep getting feedback from teachers because they're, you know, the ones that guide us. So we will continue to do that, not just now, but throughout the whole year, and make those adjustments.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. In the past, we've talked a lot about, as data has been reported to us, really looking at students who may have a failing grade or close to a failing grade. And we've spent time talking about students that are kind of on that bubble. How would we get them off of that bubble? So as we've asked both our staff and our students to do something completely different, how will we monitor those students who may start to fall into just a little bit of trouble, and before all of a sudden we're halfway through the quarter and somebody's got a D or an F, but maybe we see a pattern of something happening. Maybe it's not even attendance related. Maybe they're there, we're struggling with concepts.
Right. So, and Becky can probably add to this as well, but, you know, again, all of our schools have student support teams, and we meet weekly in our student support teams, and during that time, you know, we're looking at every single student. And so whether a student is virtual, hybrid, or in person, they're still the kids, you know, of the school. And so we want to make sure that when we have those student support team meetings, we are looking at grades, we're looking at attendance, we're looking at engagement. I mean, we're looking at all of those things, homework completion. We also want to make sure that we have office time for kids to be able to ask questions if they're struggling. For some kids, this works out a little bit better, so we want to make sure sometimes they don't want to ask questions in front of a whole class, where now, you know, they have an opportunity to email the teacher individually and can meet with them. We have musky time still that kids will be addressed, but basically every day there's office time, and when I say office time, that's, you know, time for teachers to meet with kids. But we will be continuing to look at all of our kids every single week in attendance and grades, and making sure that we are, you know, providing supports for them right when we see they may need that.
Great.
You want to add?
There's no doubt about it. This is a huge, huge change in what really feels like, I know you all started in March working on this, but it feels like we had to flip the switch by August. And I look at when I listen to the conversation, I look at the data and what we've done. We've totally changed how we're delivering education, and students they're receiving it completely differently, which is incredible and amazing. And the feedback that I hear has been, both from students and from parents, has been incredibly positive. And I am hearing grace be extended. I am hearing acknowledgments of, it might have been a little rough in the first day or weeks or whatever that looks like for families. I admit I sometimes am struggling to know which day with some of the short weeks, I'm like, okay, wait, who's supposed to be going to school when and which day? And so the work of the staff, and when I say the staff, anybody who's walking through the threshold of that building, or that's driving a bus, or making sure that in any way that our students are safe, I thank you, because it is pretty incredible what we've done. Who would have thought 6 months ago this would be where we are today? And who knows what another 6 months is going to look like, or what the new normal will be, but we certainly appreciate all the work that's been done.
It has been, I mean, as a community, I think we could be very proud. I mean, I do agree, parents have been amazing as we work through it and patient, and hopefully, you know, we've extended that as well, because everybody's just trying to, you know, navigate. And it does take every single person in our community and our school to be able to do that. So yeah, it's.
And I'd
Very
just
lucky.
like to say I've been super proud of our staff, both district staff and all the time that they've put in, our building staff, our students, our community, and kind of rallying around this. But I also, you know, again, as you mentioned, we've changed an entire model and we've done it really quickly. And it doesn't mean that we're gonna go back to the old way of doing business, right? We have such a great opportunity to leverage this, and I think Mike had, you know, you kind of set the stage for this. So I just sent my daughter to her freshman year of college. And when you look at her schedule and the schedule my other two daughters have, it's not all that different, right? For some kids, this is working really well. We have kids that are choosing on their remote day to work. We have the opportunity. I had a meeting with Muscatine Community College, and I was pretty fired up because if we continue to offer, again, not for all kids, but for some kids, if it works better for them, think about what they can do with that, what we call in the education world, the asynchronous time. They're doing mentorships, job shadowing, work experiences. We're gonna open entirely new doors than we would have 2 years ago. If somebody would said, you're gonna do this hybrid and we're gonna do these things, you're crazy, we're not doing that. But now we have the opportunity to really see how it does work for some of our kids and how can we leverage that in moving forward. And that's the exciting piece that I think as we continue to get better and moving forward.
All right, anybody have any other questions? I'm sure this will not be your last time this will be an agenda item. Thank you to everybody who worked on the report out for this as well tonight. The information is certainly appreciative, and we'll look forward to hearing more reports as information continues. That takes us to our possible action items portion of our agenda. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the director so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. Those items are minutes, employment recommendations, bills and claims, and there's a mentoring and induction agreement. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. And I think that takes us through all of our consent agenda items.
So I just want to take a pause quickly to welcome Tony. Tony, if you'll stand up, please. So Tony Loconsola, you just hired as our Director of Communications and Community Engagement, also known as Tony Tone. We are really excited to have Tony and to have this position. And so when I was hired, it was one of the things I talked about. You as a board talked about the importance of it. And what Tony's going to bring to the table and looking at this role, it's communications, it's a marketing plan as we look at our declining enrollment and just getting the word out about who we are as a district and the value we hold for this community. And it's community engagement. And going through the process, and we had a number of stakeholders involved in that process. And Tony just brings a lot of skills, and we're really excited to have him started tomorrow. And looking forward to that. I think, I want to thank Lisa for all the work that she's done with communications and done a great job. But now is really the time where we see the need for that just ongoing, somebody who can really dig into social media, the community engagement piece, that marketing piece. So welcome, Tony.
Yeah, welcome, Tony.
That had to be the longest hour and a half of your life, as he patiently sat and waited to get to that part of the agenda.
Is Lisa going on vacation then? Is that what I just heard?
Right.
Yes.
I will echo Clint's comments as well. Lisa's done a ton of work trying to wear not even multiple hats, like 8 hats, I think, and especially since the changes that we have experienced with COVID-19. So we so appreciate all that she has done. In addition to getting random texts saying, who do I call if my child is absent again because I can't remember the change this year. So she does a lot. Our next agenda item is to approve the Iowa Association School Board's 2021 legislative priorities. So the Iowa Association of School Boards is the organization through the state of Iowa, not unique in each state, that we look to. They ask us to say, will you please prioritize? And you had quite a list to choose from in your board book of what are the items that you would like to see them put to the forefront as they're working with legislatures in this coming year, and what are the things that are most important. Each district then is asked to submit those items to the Iowa Association of School Boards. When they meet in November, then they will be voting as a unit to say which of those really gives direction on where will they focus their time working with legislatures next year. So I think Clint's recommendations for us, looking through those were, and these are a little bit more detailed in your board packet, but there was early literacy, mental health, school funding policy, and supplemental state aid. And I will say, after the years of doing this and looking at, when you read through the packet, there's not a bad idea in there. It's hard to choose. There are some things that I think directly impact our district a little bit differently, but we are asked to submit 4. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Clint and Lisa, 4's we can't do 4.5. We can't do 4 with a runner-up. 4 is what we're looking for. So what are the wishes on the board as you have looked through what those recommendations, we've looked at Clint's recommendations and what your other choices were.
Clint, were you thinking that early literacy, is that going to include more of a writing component as well? I just think
I think literacy is all of those things, and I'll just say from the literacy standpoint as opposed to preschool, we have a pretty solid preschool program. So when I look at these items, these are the ones that I think give us the greatest lift. And early literacy is always going to be something we need to focus on. And that is going to be super important to long-term success of our students. So that's why that one is there. But yes, it is reading and writing.
I just think it's imperative that people be able to communicate not only verbally but in writing, especially in our community.
And there's no priority order, and these are in numerical order as they appear on that list. But it was really nice to have Mr. Mather here tonight and talk about mental health, because that would be at the top of this list, right? If we had to prioritize for me, I think again, just impacting the learning environment from a safety and security standpoint, from a climate within the building. Mental health is critical. And then, of course, funding is always an issue and always will be.
The fact that kids are more valuable in certain areas, they're more valuable in Pleasant Valley than they are here. That's not, in my mind, right, but that's what it is. So I don't think everybody knows that.
Move to approve.
I second it.
You can pick between John and Denny.
I'll
I
let
think
John
they're
take
gonna
the lead.
rock, paper, scissors over that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
It's all good. It's much better that someone's making the second than no one's making the second. So, all right. So the motion on the floor is to approve, to submit the legislative priorities of early literacy, mental health, school funding policy, supplemental state aid, not in any particular order. And bear in mind, once these, each school district, so 345 school districts across the state of Iowa, whatever the magic number is, will be submitting those, will be submitting their priorities, and then you'll get weighted. They'll be weighted from there, and then the group will be voting for those. So, is there any discussion on those 4 priorities? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. The next item on our agenda is to review and approve the Nutrition and Wellness Program. This is an administrative procedure. This is 900.8, AP, Apple Paul. Clint, do you have any information, any additional information that you would like to give us on this topic?
I don't.
None. Okay. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make the motion to approve the 900.8 AP Nutrition and Wellness Program.
I'll actually second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the administrative procedure as outlined for the Nutrition and Wellness Program 900.8 AP. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. The next item is to approve the hourly employee handbook. Clint, do you want to give any details around that item? Everybody had a copy of that in their,
You can see the changes that were
agenda.
made in there. Some of them were just various things from changes from some of the bargaining conversations to, you know, legislative changes and updates that needed to be in there. So just entertain any questions on what's been identified for approval.
I do have a question on the job postings part of it, where it says the applicants who wish to apply for the opening including employees, employee layoff, classification, so on. And then in the goals section where it's gonna be added, I assume, the employees who are offered and accept a position in a different classification will begin on year one. So does that mean that they give up basically their seniority and since they're moving into a different position?
I'm going to turn that question over to Jill. She is shaking her head, yes, that would mean that.
Different work groups have different amounts of pay and longevity.
Jill, why don't you come up, if you would, to the microphone.
Yes, Denny, that means that if you're changing from a food nutrition worker to a para, we're going to slot you in the para wage scale based on your number of years.
Okay, I understand.
Because each scale has different places in the years of service where longevity starts, as well as a different amount of money. And so it was very cumbersome and difficult to try to figure out where to place people. So that's why we've added that language.
So we could have somebody who was in the district for a number of years and go back to step one on that. Is that correct? If they say if they went from a food service person and they decided they didn't want to be in the cafeteria anymore and they decided they wanted to be a para, they would go back to step one?
I'd have to see again what the language actually says.
Okay. I believe that's what it does.
But then, yes, it goes on to say, or if the employee, can you read that?
Yeah, it says, or if the employee had prior years of service in that classification, will begin the following year at the number of prior years in the wage scale. So I guess I take that to be that have to be in that classification as, if they're moving from a, say for instance, from the food service to the para, they would have to be in the para to take that, to be in that. Is that correct?
They would move to step one,
They would move to step one.
unless they'd been a para before, and then we would give them credit
Right,
for when
right.
they were a para in the past.
Okay, so we probably, if they haven't been in that position, we're probably not gonna get people to move different classifications because they'll lose their step in the salary scale or whatever.
But there can be quite a difference in the wage also
Sure, okay.
between food, para, and custodial.
Okay.
Jill, on page 11, and I've tried to reread it 3 different times, or 5 different times, or whatever. I'm just slow, I think. It states, in the event of extended absences of 1 week, in parentheses, 5 days or more, staff members may move up to an appropriate classification and be paid according to their number of years of service, providing they are working the same schedule and performing the same duties. And this has to do with, it's in the food and nutrition one, I'm not getting what the first sentence, in the event of extended absences.
Like an extended leave of absence, if someone's off for 6 weeks for a surgery, the head cook maybe has to be off, then the cook would move up to the head cook position while the head cook was
So, okay,
on leave.
I was thinking, the person's gone and we're gonna move them up? I told you, I'm a little slow, all right?
That's
Okay,
all right.
We're talking about, if somebody's gone, we're taking another person and bumping them up.
They're filling in for that person.
Got it.
Yes,
Told you I was slow.
that's all right.
The other thing would just be, just an observation on the pay, on our, facilities and locations. You know, we still list Central Middle School on that page. The other thing is, we have fax numbers, but we don't have, like, the head secretary. I'm assuming this is a contact page. It doesn't have like the head secretary or email addresses, but it has fax numbers for all of the buildings, and Central Middle School is still listed as.
So I took Central Middle School out, and then I put it back in,
Yeah,
because we have food service people working there.
okay.
I can certainly
That makes
add the
sense. Well-
secretary's name if you'd like, and email address.
I just don't, the facsimile got me rather than an email. I don't know who faxes anything anymore, I guess.
It still happens, surprisingly.
Any other questions for Jill?
Or do we talk to the wage groups, or with the new legislation that they, or is this just something that we've come up with, or is it language is not negotiated with these groups anymore, is that correct?
That's correct. Base wages are what is negotiated now.
Okay. So they did not necessarily agree to these terms, it was just something that we came up with? Okay.
Correct. Had a lot to do with administration of the employees and the computer systems and things like that, things of that nature.
Any other questions for Jill? Okay, what are the wishes of the board on the hourly employee handbook?
I make a motion, we approve the hourly employee handbook.
Is there a second?
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the hourly employee handbook as presented. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. That takes us to our discussion and information section of our agenda. We have the second reading on revisions to policy 503.08. That is on student complaints and grievances. We take all of our readings for policies and they will go through, the board will see those 3 times. We'll vote on it the 3rd time. So if you have any questions or additions, changes, etc., you can forward those to Lisa. I'm going to put Lisa on the spot and say, I'm going to assume you haven't heard anything from our last meeting on revision, or on the first time around. Okay, all right. Tom, that
Yes.
takes us to the next thing, which are the June financials.
Yeah. All right. So in the board book tonight is the June kind of final financials. We have to submit our annual report by September 25th. So you're probably wondering, well, why is it the 25th? And it's been the 15th forever, but because of certain circumstances with the storm, and then the annual transportation report went through a major renovation, and it was not made available to school districts till September 7th. So there's something in the Iowa code that says if there's a application not available 14 days before a due date, then they have to give an extension. So although I feel like we're ready to certify, what I'm presenting tonight is what I'm most comfortable with. We are still reviewing our annual transportation report and special ed supplement. But I've also included just an agenda item kind of a chronological order of things, financial things we will be doing in the future. Tonight is FY20 financials, October 12th. Here's some acronyms. Special ed supplement. Our annual transportation report for FY20 will go over as informational next board meeting. And then we'll also seek approval as an action item for LEP allowable costs. And so we'll go over that on October 12th, as well as if we have a special ed deficit, we'll have to approve, we will ask for approval of additional spending authority there. For informational purposes, our audit is the 19th and 20th of October for FY20. December 14th, the School Budget Review Committee application for modified supplement amount in 1 or 2 or 3 areas. One would be increase in enrollment. One would be if we have more open enrollment out this year than we did last year's count, we'll seek additional spending authority for those students. And then LEP, limited English proficiency instruction beyond 5 years. We get additional spending authority for those students too. Students from 0 to 5, we get automatically in our aid and levy formula, but we do get to ask for additional authority for students beyond 5 years. In January of 21, we'll get the SBRC modified supplement amount for dropout prevention. So that's an FY22, basically projecting our budget for at-risk dropout prevention. Probably February 8th, we'll bring back the FY20 audit to you for approval. February 22nd, we will set aside as our FY22 budget work session and capital projects proposals. And then April 12th of 21, we'll obviously have to approve our FY22 budget, potential budget amendment, and then budget guarantee resolution if we need it. And then again in May and June, we'll start thinking about student fees for next school year. So, starting with the general fund, the first page on your board book, revenues did decrease, and I'm also presenting this as a 3-year kind of average change over the last 3 years. So, our revenues decreased by 1%, our expenditures increased by 0.5%. Roughly, the biggest thing I would notice on this page would be other local revenues, down 24%. Well, what are those local revenues? So those consist of mobile home taxes, rentals for facilities and or musical instruments, things like that. Contributions and donations, that's typically, not surprised it's down considering, we shut down in March. Then there's also textbook rentals and textbook sales. So we did, if you remember last year, we kind of reduced across the board our instructional material fee. So there was a reduction in revenue there that we knew about, and then, some other miscellaneous revenues. So, yeah, so that's the general fund. The next page are two financial indicators. Sure.
Before you go on, one, there's $1 million in taxes levied on property, right? Difference from one year to the next.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty significant, I would think. So we've reduced the taxes levied.
I mean, yeah, our property tax asking was less overall.
Right.
Yeah.
But we've increased the funds to instruction over that same period of time.
Okay.
Right. So our instruction
It was
budget
up by
went up.
200,000.
Yep. Student support services
Okay.
went up. So maybe for Tony, our new director of communications, that's a pretty good story.
Okay.
To say that our taxes levied have decreased while our dollars to instruction has increased over that same period of time. I don't know. If we're looking for stories.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great story.
Feels like a tweet.
Okay.
Something. I don't know if it takes
Well,
a whole show. I don't know if it needs its own show.
I appreciate that. you know, this isn't necessarily fun and interesting stuff that I'm presenting, so any kind of twist we can play on it, that is awesome, so.
Tom, this is exactly fun things right here. You're doing more with less. I mean, come on.
I appreciate that.
All right.
So, all right, so the next two pages.
Hang on a quick moment, I
oh yeah,
apologize.
for sure.
Student transportation, why would that actually be less for this school year? I would think it'd be more considering what we've had to do.
Well, there's tuition in that, so that's regular ed tuition and special ed tuition. I do know, if I remember right, our open enrolled in was higher in FY20 than it was in FY19, so we would have seen additional tuition. So that's probably where the most increase was. So between the tuition increase versus transportation fees.
Gotcha, makes sense now, thank you.
No problem. Don't mean to rush through these. Any other questions then?
Go ahead.
So the next two pages are our general fund financial indicators, okay? The first one being, you know, our unspent authorized budget. Apologize for the grammatical errors. That is actual expenditures. And so for FY20, we're estimating right now that our unspent authorized budget will increase about 0.5%. And that is just the remaining legal spending authority at the end of fiscal year 20. And there's a couple estimates in there, and that's yet to be determined with the amount we overspend in our LEP and special education. So I'll have those for you next week or next board meeting. So first financial indicator to me is a positive that we're ending fiscal year 20 as far as our unspent authorized budget in a good position. Still above the state average, or actually right at the state average. 5-second pause. The next page, our solvency ratio. So this is just a snapshot as of June 30th, you know, a point in time measure, revenue remaining after we, you know, close our books, gather the year's revenues, and paying all of our obligations. So again, we are seeing a 2-year decline, which is not, we would have expected that because cash reserve levy, we have not had one the last 2 fiscal years because we were not able to have one. We had plenty of cash to weather, you know, these last 2 fiscal years. We're still at a above the state average here and within our recommended goal. So, you know, not a red flag being raised here at all, but again, I feel like that is a good financial indicator for us at the end of fiscal 20. So,
Tom, I have a quick question, and unless I'm not seeing the number, the percentage right, for the statewide for FY19, the max is 118.2%.
yes. Yeah, so.
Well, what does that mean for a school district to be?
So they probably have way more cash than they need to, really.
That's what I'm saying. Aren't they spending
it's your
any money?
unassigned fund balance. So that's that accumulation of revenues being more than expenses divided by your revenues. Yeah. So, you know, it's probably one isolated district. They might be a K-12 or
it's probably a small district.
like a
too,
small
where those
district,
fluctuations can magnify.
a K-7 or 8 district like that. So, yeah.
And the recommended goal is 5 to 15%, and we're at 20.3.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of set by IASB. I mean, I'm comfortable with that. I mean, yep. So. Okay, the next page, we're going to start into our other funds, the management fund. Okay, it's a taxing fund. The thing that I will point out here is our ending fund balance is up 35% from 2 years ago. Well, the management fund, if you remember, is all property tax, and it pays for such things as property casualty insurance, workers' comp insurance, early retirement plans, potentially unemployment. But $1.2 million was our expenditures last year, down 4.6%. Now, I think I've talked about this at different budget work sessions where we try to plan out not next fiscal year, but the next one after that. And a lot of times we're using projections of increases in our property casualty because we really don't know 2 years out of maybe 10% or 5%. And so I would say that those projections that we have don't come in at the same amount of what we projected them to be. For example, in FY21, which is the current year we're in, we did, I don't remember the figure, but we went out and we looked at a new workers' comp company because our renewal with Muscatine here, we have a very good workers' comp experience mod. If you're familiar with that means is, we're doing well with not having a large number of workers' comp claims. So we went out and sought bids from other companies, and the company we were with wouldn't budge on their renewal, so we went with another company. So there's going to be one case where our expenditures for this year in FY21 aren't as much as we would have anticipated. So I would say we're in a good position to look at our early retirement plan for next year and maybe not have to increase our management fund levy to fund that.
And Tom, you said that number's in here. Is it one of the
Where?
expenditure, what we pay for early retirement? Is it one of the expenditures
it would
in this?
It could be under instruction or support services wherever that employee was expensed during the fiscal year. So I don't have that exact number, but it's part of the 1.223, yeah. All right, the next page is, I've combined capital projects. So we have 2 capital project funds, the SAVE, which is basically our 1-cent sales tax, statewide 1-cent sales tax, and then our Fund 36 is our physical plant and equipment levy. So clearly, our expenditures are, hang on a second. Oh yeah, our fund balance went down drastically, 43%. Our expenses went up 97% from 2 years ago, which clearly we knew that. We have fiscal year 20, we had just a boatload of capital project expenditures. And so on the revenue side, I would just point out on line 12, there's 2 line 12s. You're going, what the heck? So line 12, the second line 12 is that sales tax revenue that we get from the state of Iowa. So if you can see there that $5,072,000 this year, $5,070,000 the prior year. So we didn't see any really change in what our expected sales tax revenues were going to be. And even we got our estimates for FY21 from the Department of Revenue, and we're right around, where do I have that guy written down? 4.9 million. That is a per pupil allocation, so naturally we're gonna see some decrease, but the last 2 years, the revenue, or the increased, how do I say this? The increased sales tax kind of offset our decline in enrollment, where I do believe they're predicting a 2% revenue growth for FY21. So, still a fairly, not a real significant hit like maybe we thought we were going to see, but, so I was just going to point that out. On line 8, other revenues from local sources, we did receive a $25,000 donation this fiscal year from a PTO at McKinley that donated for some furniture. The prior year, you know, that particular line is up 110%. Well, last year, $45,000, we did receive a refund from a prior year expenditure on an insurance claim. So I can explain the 110%. The $1 million, line 18, this current year, the $1 million donation had to kind of go into an other financing source because it was a rather generous donation for the high school science wing. That's where that falls in, the money we got from the Carver Foundation. So, any questions on that? So the next one is activity fund. So the activity fund is basically self-sustaining. Naturally, we would probably see less revenue this year and less expenditures this year, and revenues were down 14% over the last 2 years and expenses were down 7%. And then the last page, nutrition fund. So, as I'll just start with nutrition program sales, down 27.5% from 2 years ago. Naturally, our nutrition sales are going to be down because we stopped serving the national. We stopped the National School Lunch and Breakfast Program when we shut down in March. Okay. Then you have to kind of go down to federal sources. That 1.7 million is made up of both the National School Lunch and Breakfast Program revenue of 1.3 million, which is down about 300,000 from the year before, but it also includes almost $200,000 of the CARES food program that we started running in March and that we're going to continue to run now. You've all been made aware that practically every school district is running meals free for all kids until basically the money runs out, which I've heard could be in November, but so we'll be running that program, and then it also includes that federal 1.7 million includes that fresh fruits and vegetables program that we have too. Now, our expenses on line 31, I have one correction. They're 2,758,211. So that's the second correction. I apologize for that. And then our investment in capital assets is actually 430,951. Now, we did invest almost 200,000 in capital assets in the nutrition program last year at this time, obviously before we knew any COVID was going to happen and shut down our program. But as you can see, our nutrition fund balance went down 34% from 2 years ago, but I still feel like 404,000 is a very healthy fund balance. We were seeing this increasing from the past 3 years, our fund balance increasing in the nutrition fund. So, you know, that's kind of where nutrition fund landed for the fiscal year. Obviously, they were affected more than maybe our general fund, but you know, I still think we're in a solid position there in the nutrition fund. But
Tom, I got a question on when you said that in November or something that monies may run out. So is there community-wise or anything of a game plan to do any continuation after that period of time, or?
So then we would just go back to the National School Lunch and Breakfast Program, where if you're on free and reduced, you're still free. or you're reduced, or you have to start paying then for your lunch or breakfast again. So it's going to be very confusing for families. It already kind of was with, 4 elementaries being free for lunch and breakfast, but, a lot of communication would be going out, so. Okay. That's it. Thank you for your time.
What questions do you have for Tom? All right.
Thanks.
Tom, thank you.
Yep.
It's very helpful to see the comparison year over year as well. I appreciate that, and certainly tells us if gives us an idea
right
where we're
trend.
headed. Yes,
Yep.
yes. And I appreciate your passion for all of those numbers.
Thank you.
We all have a gift. That is not my gift. So, I appreciate your passion for
Thank
that. That takes us to announcements that we have. And here's what I have. September 16th, which is Wednesday. I almost said tomorrow, but it's Wednesday. September 16th, there will be a 2-hour early dismissal for staff for professional development. September 28th, we will have a board work session. We'll be meeting at 6 p.m. and we'll be at the Administration Center at 2900. One of the conversations the board has had is that as we are dealing with much more information and trying to stay current on our return to learn plan, adding in an additional meeting gives us an opportunity to converse and learn from each other and be able to ask some more in-depth questions separate from the meeting or separate from the business that needs to happen each month. So right now we've got a couple of those that the board has added in. So the next one will be September 28th, and again that'll be at 6 p.m. And then October 12th, that'll take us to our next regularly scheduled meeting. We'll be back here at City Hall. That'll be at 7 p.m. Does anyone else have any other announcements for the good of the cause? And if not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn for the evening. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you very much.